Jake Morrison sat at his desk looking at the harvest reports from New Terra Colony. The numbers were good this season. The wheat fields had produced twice as much as last year, and the corn was ready for shipping back to Earth. He smiled as he signed the final documents. After 3 years as colony administrator, he finally felt like they were making real progress. Outside his office window, children played in the settlement's main square. Their laughter echoed through the streets as they chased each other around the fountain. The colony had grown to almost 300,000 people, making it the third largest human settlement beyond Earth. Families had come here looking for a better life, and Jake was proud to help them find it. The communication panel on his desk beeped softly. Jake pressed the button and heard the voice of Maria Santos, his deputy administrator. "Jake, we're getting some strange readings from the orbital sensors. Lieutenant Sullivan wants to speak with you." Jake frowned. Kate Sullivan was the leader of the colony's defense force, a small unit of 12 soldiers with basic equipment. They rarely had anything to worry about except the occasional equipment malfunction or lost hiker. "Send her in." Kate entered the office with a worried expression on her face. She was a tough woman in her early 30s who had served in Earth's Colonial Defense Force for 8 years. Her brown hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and her uniform was crisp despite the concern in her eyes. "Jake, we've detected several large ships approaching the system. They're not responding to our communication attempts, and they're not showing up in any of our ship registries." Kate placed a datapad on his desk. "They'll be here in less than an hour." Jake studied the sensor readings. The ships were massive, much larger than anything in the human fleet. Their design was completely foreign, with curved hulls and strange energy signatures. Could they be from another human colony? "No, sir. The design is unlike anything we've ever seen. I've already sent a message to Earth requesting immediate assistance, but it will take hours for them to respond." Kate's voice was steady, but Jake could hear the worry underneath. Before Jake could respond, the lights in his office flickered. Then came a sound that would haunt him for the rest of his life, a deep, rumbling roar that seemed to come from the sky itself. The building shook violently, and Jake's coffee cup fell to the floor, shattering into pieces. What was that? And Jake rushed to the window. In the distance, he could see a massive column of smoke rising from the eastern district. The residential area where thousands of families lived was burning. Kate grabbed her radio. "All units, this is Sullivan. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. All civilians are to report to emergency shelters immediately." Another explosion rocked the colony. This time it was closer, and Jake could see the bright flash of energy weapons cutting through the morning sky. The alien ships had arrived, and they were not here to make friends. "Kate, how long can we hold them off?" Jake asked as he watched more energy beams rain down on his colony. "With 12 soldiers and basic equipment, not long." Kate's honesty was brutal but necessary. "Our weapons are designed for crowd control and basic security. These ships have military-grade shields and weapons. We might buy you enough time to evacuate some civilians, but that's all." Jake nodded grimly. He had always known this day might come. The universe was a dangerous place, and humanity had been lucky to expand as far as they had without major conflict. But luck had a way of running out. The radio crackled with reports from across the colony. "East District is completely destroyed. We've lost contact with the school. Medical center is gone. Hundreds of casualties. The power plant is under attack. We're losing life support." Kate coordinated her small force as best she could. Sergeant Tom Bradley led half the team to protect the communication center while Corporal Lisa Kim tried to organize civilian evacuations, but it was hopeless. The alien weapons were too powerful, and there were too many of them. Jake ran to the communication center with Kate. The building was damaged but still functional. "Can we get a message to Earth?" "I'm trying, sir." The communication officer, a young man named Pete Johnson, was working frantically at his console. "The aliens are jamming most frequencies, but I might be able to get through on the emergency channel." Another explosion shook the building. Through the cracked windows, Jake could see alien soldiers landing in the colony's center. They were tall, gray-skinned creatures with 4 arms and glowing red eyes. They moved with deadly precision, shooting anyone who tried to run. "Got it!" Pete shouted. "Emergency channel is open. You have maybe 30 seconds before they jam this." "Frequency 2, Jake grabbed the microphone. His hands were shaking, but his voice was clear. "This is Colony Administrator Jake Morrison on New Terra. We are under attack by unknown alien forces. They have destroyed most of the colony. Request immediate military assistance. The aliens are they're killing everyone. Women, children, everyone." The signal died. Pete shook his head. "That's all we can do, sir. They've jammed everything now." Kate looked out the window at the burning colony. "Jake, we need to get to the shelters. My people can't hold them much longer." But it was too late. The alien soldiers had found them. The door to the communication center exploded inward, and 3 of the gray-skinned creatures entered. They raised their weapons, strange devices that hummed with deadly energy. Kate stepped forward, her pistol drawn. "Stay back," she shouted. The aliens looked at her weapon and seemed to find it amusing. One of them made a sound that might have been laughter. The alien in front raised its weapon. Kate fired first, her bullet striking the creature's chest, but they bounced off harmlessly. The aliens were wearing some kind of armor that made human weapons useless. The alien fired back. Kate's scream was cut short as the energy beam hit her. She fell to the ground, her body smoking. Jake knelt beside her, but there was nothing he could do. Kate Sullivan, the brave woman who had tried to protect his colony, was dead. The aliens pointed their weapons at Jake and Pete. Jake closed his eyes, thinking of his wife and daughter back on Earth. He hoped they would be safe. He hoped someone would remember New Terra and the people who had died here, but the killing shot never came. One of the aliens spoke in broken English. "You are the leader here." Jake opened his eyes. "Yes." "Good. You will send message to your Earth. Tell them we are Zephyrian Collective. Tell them we have destroyed all human colonies. Tell them to surrender or face same fate." Jake's blood ran cold. "All colonies?" 7 colonies destroyed today. 2 million humans dead. Your species is weak. Your weapons are toys. Surrender now, and we will let Earth live as our slaves. Refuse, and we will kill every human in galaxy. The alien handed Jake a communication device. "Send message now." With shaking hands, Jake activated the device. He looked at the burning remains of his colony, at Kate's body, at the terror in Pete's eyes. New Terra was gone. The children who had been playing in the square were dead. The families who had come here for a better life had found only death. "This is Jake Morrison, former administrator of New Terra Colony," he said into the device. "The Zephyrian Collective has destroyed our colonies. They demand Earth surrender. They have superior weapons and technology. We cannot fight them." The alien leader nodded with satisfaction. "Good. Your military leaders will understand. Resistance is futile." As Jake spoke those words, he had no idea that his message would reach General Richard Hayes at Colonial Defense Command. He had no idea that Earth had been preparing for this moment for decades. He had no idea that humanity's real army was about to wake up. All Jake knew was that his colony was dead, and the aliens thought they had won. But they were about to learn that killing human civilians was very different from fighting human soldiers. The massacre at New Terra was over. The real war was about to begin. General Richard Hayes stood in the Emergency Command Center deep beneath the Pentagon. The massive screens around him showed the destruction of 7 human colonies. 2 million people were dead, and the world's leaders were panicking. The Zephyrian ultimatum had arrived 3 hours ago, and already half the Global Defense Council was talking about surrender. "General, the President is on line 1, said his aide, Colonel Frank Davis. The young officer looked sick as he watched the footage from New Terra. Bodies lay scattered in the streets, and buildings still burned from the alien attack. Hayes picked up the secure phone. "Madam President," Richard, "I need options. The aliens have weapons we can't match. Our colonial defense force was wiped out in minutes. What can we do?" President Lisa Carter's voice was strained. She had been in office for only 6 months, and now she faced the possible extinction of humanity. Madam President, I need you to gather the Global Defense Council. There's something you need to know? Something that's been classified for over 60 years? Hayes looked at the destruction on the screens. It was time to reveal the truth. 2 hours later, the world's most powerful leaders sat in a secure conference room. President Carter was there, along with the prime ministers of Britain and Canada, the presidents of Russia and China, and a dozen other heads of state. They all looked terrified. Ladies and gentlemen, Hayes began, what you're about to hear is classified at the highest levels. The colonial defense force that was destroyed today was never our real military. It was a deliberate deception. The Chinese president leaned forward. What do you mean, General? I mean, we've been lying to everyone, including most of our own governments for decades. The colonial defense force was kept small and weak on purpose. We wanted any hostile aliens to think humanity was defenseless. The British Prime Minister looked confused. But why would we do that? Hayes pressed a button on the table. The wall screen showed a new image, a massive underground facility carved into solid rock. Because we've been preparing for this day since 1947. The Roswell incident wasn't a weather balloon. It was a crashed alien scout ship. We've been studying alien technology ever since. The room erupted in shocked voices. Hayes raised his hand for silence. Please, let me finish. We realized that if hostile aliens ever found Earth, they would expect us to fight them the same way we fight each other. So we created a false military, one that looked exactly like what they would expect from a primitive species. President Carter stared at the screen. Where is our real military? 300 miles beneath the Colorado mountains. Would you like to meet them? The journey to the hidden facility took 4 hours on a high-speed underground train. The world leaders sat in stunned silence as they traveled through tunnels that didn't exist on any map. When they finally arrived, they were met by a woman, in a uniform unlike any they had seen. Leaders of Earth, I'm Dr. Amanda Price, Chief Science Officer of the Terran Shock Corps. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and intelligent eyes. Welcome to Omega Base. The facility was enormous. Corridors stretched in every direction, filled with soldiers in advanced armor. The technology was clearly decades ahead of anything the public knew existed. Weapons that looked like they belonged in science fiction movies lined the walls. How many people are down here? Asked the Russian president. 50,000 soldiers plus 20,000 support staff, Dr. Price replied. We've been training and preparing for this moment for 3 generations. Every one of our soldiers is a volunteer who gave up their old life to protect humanity. They were led to a large briefing room where a man in black armor waited for them. He was tall and muscular, with scars on his face that spoke of hard fighting. His armor was covered in weapons and equipment that looked alien in design. This is Commander Nathan Cross, leader of the 1st Battalion, Dr. Price said. Commander, would you please explain our capabilities? Cross stepped forward. His voice was calm but carried the authority of someone used to life-and-death decisions. Honored leaders, what you saw today was not a military defeat. It was bait. We've been studying the Zephyrian Collective for 20 years. We know their tactics, their technology, and their weaknesses. You knew about them? President Carter asked. We've been tracking their expansion across the galaxy. They always follow the same pattern: attack civilian targets, demand surrender, then enslave the survivors. They've done this to dozens of species. Cross touched a control on his armor, and the room's screens showed star maps with marked alien territories. But today they made a mistake, Cross continued. They attacked us thinking we were like all the other species they've conquered. They expected us to surrender after seeing our military destroyed. Instead, they've given us the perfect excuse to reveal our true strength. Dr. Price stepped forward. Commander, show them the neural interface. Cross nodded and removed his helmet. The leaders gasped as they saw the metal implants around his skull. Every Shock Corps soldier has a neural link system. We can communicate instantly, share tactical information, and coordinate attacks with perfect precision. Our reaction times are 3 times faster than normal humans. A young woman in similar armor entered the room. This is Captain Amy Rodriguez. One of our best squad leaders, Dr. Price said. Rodriguez moved to the center of the room. Without warning, she drew her weapon and fired 6 shots in different directions. The leaders jumped back in fear, but the shots had hit 6 small targets that had popped up around the room, targets too small and fast for normal human eyes to track. The neural interface allows us to process information faster than any biological brain, Rodriguez explained. We can see enemy movements before they happen, coordinate attacks without speaking, and fight as a single unit instead of individual. Soldiers, Cross put his helmet back on. The Zephyrians have superior numbers and basic energy weapons, but they've never faced an enemy that can think and move as one. They fight like individuals, we fight like a hive mind. What about their ships? Asked the Canadian Prime Minister. Our satellites showed massive vessels with advanced weapons. Dr. Price smiled for the first time. Would you like to meet Admiral Carl Peterson? They were taken to another section of the base, one that opened into a vast underground hangar. The leaders stood in shock as they saw dozens of sleek warships unlike anything in the human fleet. The ships were dark gray, almost black, with smooth hulls that seemed to absorb light. Admiral Peterson was a stocky man with white hair and sharp blue eyes. He had spent his entire career in space, and it showed in the way he moved, always ready for low gravity. Welcome to the Ghost Fleet, he said. These ships have been hidden in the outer solar system for 30 years. Hidden how? Asked the German Chancellor. Stealth technology reverse engineered from alien wreckage? Our ships are invisible to sensors and armed with weapons that can crack a planet's surface. Peterson gestured to the largest ship in the hangar. The UES Retribution is our flagship. She's been waiting for this day. Lieutenant Ben Murphy, the fleet's tactical officer, stepped forward. Sir, we've been monitoring the Zephyrian fleet. They're celebrating their victory near Neptune. They think the war is over. Peterson's grin was cold. They're about to learn the difference between attacking civilians and fighting soldiers. Admiral Hayes requests permission to deploy the Ghost Fleet. Hayes looked at the world leaders. President Carter spoke for all of them. Permission granted? Show them what happens when you attack humanity. As the leaders watched, the Ghost Fleet began to move. The ships lifted from the hangar with silent grace, their stealth systems already active. Within hours, they would reach the Zephyrian fleet. The aliens thought they had won an easy victory. They were about to discover that they had awakened something far more dangerous than they could imagine. The Colonial Defense Force had been humanity's mask. The Terran Shock Corps was humanity's true face, and it was a face of war. The awakening protocol was complete. Earth's real army was going to war. Supreme Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the destruction of the human colonies on the main screen. The gray-skinned alien was pleased with how easily his forces had crushed the pathetic human resistance. 7 colonies destroyed, 2 million humans dead, and not a single Zephyrian casualty. It had been almost too easy. Commander, we are receiving surrender messages from several human worlds, reported his tactical officer, Subcommander Kexmuth. They are begging for mercy. Veltar made a sound that passed for laughter among his species. Of course they are. These soft creatures have no stomach for real war. Send word to the High Council that the human expansion is ended. We will harvest their worlds for slaves within the month. The Zephyrian fleet had positioned itself near the giant planet the humans called Neptune. Over 300 warships floated in formation, their crews celebrating their easy victory. The aliens had conquered 47 species in the past 2 centuries, and the humans were proving to be the weakest yet. Sir, long-range sensors are picking up something strange, reported the sensor operator. There are some unusual readings from the outer system, but they keep disappearing. Veltar barely looked up from his victory reports. Probably just space debris. These primitive humans leave their garbage everywhere. On the bridge of the UES Retribution, Admiral Carl Peterson watched the alien fleet through his ship's advanced sensors. The Ghost Fleet had moved into position around the Zephyrian formation. completely invisible to their primitive detection systems. 48 human warships surrounded the enemy, and the aliens had no idea they were there. "Admiral, all ships report ready for combat," said Lieutenant Ben Murphy from his tactical station. "The Zephyrians are in perfect formation for a coordinated strike." Peterson studied the enemy positions. The aliens were bunched together, confident in their superiority. They had no idea that human weapons could punch through their shields like paper. "Signal all ships, prepare to decloak on my mark." Throughout the Ghost Fleet, human soldiers prepared for battle. These weren't the undertrained colonists the aliens had murdered. These were the elite of humanity, soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Their neural implants linked them together in a network of shared consciousness. They moved as one mind in dozens of bodies. Captain Steve Collins checked his boarding team's equipment one final time. His soldiers wore black armor that made them nearly invisible, and their weapons were designed to work in the vacuum of space. They had studied Zephyrian ship designs for years, and they knew exactly where to strike. "All teams, remember your targets," Collins spoke into his neural link. "We need prisoners for interrogation. Kill the crew, but keep the officers alive." "Admiral, we're in position," reported Commander Sarah Blake from the UES Vengeance. "The aliens still don't know we're here." Peterson smiled grimly. The Zephyrians had made the same mistake as every other species they'd conquered. They assumed their enemies would fight the same way they did. They had never faced an enemy that could coordinate perfectly, strike without warning, and disappear just as quickly. "All ships, decloak and engage. Show them what happens when you attack humanity." The space around Neptune suddenly filled with human warships. The Ghost Fleet appeared as if by magic, their dark hulls emerging from nothingness. The Zephyrian fleet found themselves surrounded by enemies they never saw coming. "What is this?" Veltar screamed as his bridge shook from the first human attack. "Where did these ships come from?" His tactical officer was frantically working his controls. "Sir, they appeared from nowhere. Our sensors show no trace of them." "Until they fired? Their weapons are—" "Sir, they're cutting through our shields like they don't exist." The human quantum torpedoes struck the Zephyrian ships with devastating effect. The alien energy shields, designed to stop conventional plasma weapons, offered no protection against the new human technology. Ship after ship exploded in brilliant flashes of light. "Return fire," Veltar ordered. "Destroy these humans." The Zephyrian fleet turned their weapons on the Ghost Fleet, but their plasma bolts simply bounced off the human ship's adaptive armor. The human vessels seemed to absorb the energy attacks and use them to power their own weapons. "Sir, our weapons are having no effect," reported the weapons officer. "Their armor is adapting to our plasma frequency. Every shot makes them stronger." On the Retribution, Lieutenant Murphy coordinated the attack with cold precision. His neural implants allowed him to process information from all 48 ships simultaneously. He could see the entire battle as if he were watching from above. "Enemy flagship is trying to retreat," Murphy reported. "UES Destroyer and UES Phantom are moving to intercept." Admiral Peterson watched as two of his ships moved to cut off the alien commander's escape. The Zephyrian flagship was twice the size of any human vessel, but it was slow and clumsy compared to the Ghost Fleet's sleek design. "Signal the boarding teams," Peterson ordered. "I want that alien commander alive." "Captain." Collins led his team through the vacuum of space toward the damaged Zephyrian flagship. His soldiers moved in perfect coordination, their neural links allowing them to communicate without words. They attached magnetic clamps to the alien ship's hull and began cutting through the metal with plasma torches inside the Zephyrian ship. The crew was in panic. They had never faced an enemy that could board their vessels in the middle of a space battle. Their ship-to-ship combat training was useless against soldiers who could fight in zero gravity. "Sir, they're inside the ship," reported a terrified Zephyrian soldier. "They're moving through the corridors like ghosts. We can't hit them." The human soldiers used their neural links to share tactical information instantly. When one soldier Spotted an enemy, all the others knew exactly where to aim. They moved through the alien ship like a coordinated swarm, appearing and disappearing before the confused defenders could react. Collins reached the bridge first, his team flowing around him like shadows. The Zephyrian crew tried to fight back, but their weapons were designed for long-range combat, not close-quarters fighting. The humans had trained for this exact situation. "Surrender now, and you will be treated according to the laws of war," Collins announced in the Zephyrian language. His neural implants had downloaded their entire linguistic database during the first attack. Veltar looked at the human soldiers in shock. They were smaller than Zephyrians, but they moved with deadly precision. Their armor made them look like demons, and their weapons hummed with deadly energy. "You are not what our intelligence reported," Veltar said. "The humans we fought at the colonies were weak, frightened. You are different." Collins stepped forward, his weapon trained on the alien commander. "Those were civilians. We are soldiers. There's a difference." Around them, the space battle was ending. The Zephyrian fleet was destroyed, their ships floating as burning wreckage. Of the 300 vessels that had the human colonies, only a dozen remained intact, all of them captured by human boarding parties. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the alien homeworld," Lieutenant Murphy reported. "They're demanding to know what happened to their fleet." Peterson looked at the captured alien commander. "Tell them that they killed our civilians. Now they get to meet our military." The battle near Neptune was over in less than 2 hours. The Zephyrian Collective had lost their entire invasion fleet, and they still didn't understand what had happened. They thought they were fighting primitive humans with basic technology. They were about to learn that humanity's real war machine was just getting started. The Ghost Fleet had revealed itself, and the aliens were about to discover that attacking Earth's colonies was the worst mistake they had ever made. The massacre at the colonies had been the aliens' victory. The battle at Neptune was humanity's reply. And this was just the beginning. General Richard Hayes stood in the war room watching the reports come in from across the galaxy. The destruction of the Zephyrian fleet near Neptune had sent shockwaves through the alien empire. For the first time in centuries, someone had defeated them in battle. "General, we're receiving messages from 17 different alien species," reported Colonel Frank Davis. "They're all asking the same thing. How did we destroy the Zephyrian fleet so easily?" Hayes smiled grimly. "Tell them they'll find out soon enough. What's the status of our counterattack?" Captain Helen Torres stepped forward with a datapad. She was the intelligence officer who had been studying the captured alien ship data. "Sir, we've decoded their navigation systems. We know the location of every Zephyrian military base, supply depot, and their homeworld." "Excellent. And our forces?" The Shock Corps is ready to deploy. Commander Cross has divided his troops into 3 attack groups. The first will liberate Proxima 7, the only human colony that survived the initial attack. The second will strike at the Zephyrian supply lines. The third will advance directly toward their homeworld. Hayes nodded. The time for defense was over. Humanity was going on the offensive, and the aliens were about to learn what it meant to fight a truly dangerous enemy. At Proxima 7, the mining colony was under siege. The Zephyrians had surrounded the settlement with ground troops, but they hadn't been able to break through the colony's defenses. Unlike the agricultural worlds, Proxima 7 was a military installation disguised as a civilian mining operation. Sergeant Dan Lewis crouched behind a defensive barrier, checking his weapon. His powered armor was different from the Shock Corps. Standard issue, it was designed for mining operations but equipped with military-grade weapon systems. Around him, 50 other miners prepared for the real battle. "Incoming transmission from orbit," reported Private Kelly Johnson. "It's the Ghost Fleet," Lewis activated his communicator. "This is Sergeant Lewis, commander of Proxima 7 Defense Force. We're ready to drop the act." Admiral Peterson's voice came through clearly. "Understood, Sergeant. The cavalry is here. Drop your masks and show these aliens what a real human mining operation looks like." Lewis grinned and switched to the all-colony frequency. "All units, this is Lewis. Protocol 7 is now active. Repeat, Protocol 7 is active. Time to stop pretending we're helpless miners. Across the colony, hidden weapon systems emerged from seemingly innocent mining equipment. The massive drill platforms revealed themselves as artillery pieces. The ore processing plants opened to show rows of missiles. The civilian miners threw off their work clothes to reveal military armor underneath. The Zephyrian ground commander, General Kexmuth, watched in horror as the human colony transformed before his eyes. What had appeared to be a simple mining operation was actually a heavily fortified military base. "This is impossible," Kexmuth said to his aide. "Our intelligence showed this was a civilian target. These are just miners." "Sir, they're firing some kind of new weapon," the aide reported. "Our shields are useless against it." The human artillery opened fire with weapons that had been hidden for years. The shells weren't filled with explosives. They contained nanobots that ate through Zephyrian armor and shields. Within minutes, the alien siege force was dissolving into metallic dust. "Retreat, all units retreat," Kexmuth ordered, but it was too late. The human miners had surrounded his entire army. They moved with military precision, their neural links allowing them to coordinate attacks perfectly. Lewis led his team in a charge against the alien command post. His powered armor deflected the enemy's plasma weapons, while his own rifle fired rounds that could penetrate any known shield. The Zephyrians had never faced weapons like these. "General Kexmuth, you are surrounded," Lewis announced in the alien language. "Surrender now, and you will be treated according to the laws of war." The alien general looked around at his destroyed army. In less than an hour, his siege force had been completely eliminated. The humans had been pretending to be weak, drawing him into a trap. "You lied to us," Kexmuth said bitterly. "You made us think you were helpless civilians." "No," Lewis replied. "You assumed we were helpless because that's what you wanted to believe. We never said we were weak. You just never bothered to ask." While the battle raged at Proxima 7, the Second Human Strike Force was attacking Zephyrian supply lines throughout the galaxy. These weren't the large fleet battles that made headlines. These were small, precise strikes that crippled the alien war machine. Colonel Frank Davis led a stealth team to the Zephyrian fuel depot on Kepler Station. The aliens had built their supply base on an asteroid, thinking it would be impossible to attack. They hadn't counted on human ingenuity. "Remember, we're not here to fight," Davis told his team as they approached the asteroid. "We're here to send a message, plant the charges, and get out." The human soldiers moved through the asteroid's tunnels like ghosts. Their stealth suits made them invisible to alien sensors, and their neural links allowed them to coordinate without speaking. They placed explosive charges throughout the fuel depot, each one timed to detonate in sequence. When the charges exploded, the asteroid became a miniature sun. The fuel depot contained enough energy to power the Zephyrian fleet for months. Its destruction would cripple their ability to launch new attacks. "This is Colonel Davis to Fleet Command," he reported as his team escaped. "Kepler Station is neutralized. The aliens won't be refueling here anymore." Similar attacks were happening across the galaxy. Human strike teams hit ammunition depots, communication centers, and supply convoys. The Zephyrian Empire, which had seemed invincible just days before, was falling apart. Captain Tony Baker led a reconnaissance team to the edge of the Zephyrian home system. His job was to gather intelligence about the alien homeworld before the main attack. What he found shocked him. "Fleet Command, this is Baker. You need to see this," he transmitted. Sending sensor data back to Admiral Peterson. Dr. Amanda Price studied the data from her laboratory on Earth. What she saw made her sick. The Zephyrian homeworld wasn't just a military target, it was a slave planet. Millions of beings from dozens of species were being worked to death in massive industrial complexes. "Admiral, we're not just fighting an invasion," Price reported. "We're fighting a slave empire. The Zephyrians have been conquering species for centuries, using them as forced labor." Peterson's face hardened. "How many slaves?" "Conservative estimate? 50 million beings from at least 30 different species. They're being worked to death in factories, mines, and construction projects." The Zephyrians have turned conquest into an industry. The discovery changed everything. This wasn't just about protecting Earth anymore. Humanity was fighting to liberate an entire galaxy from centuries of oppression. Signal all units, Peterson ordered. New mission parameters. We're not just defeating the Zephyrians. We're liberating every slave world in their empire. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Emperor Nalveth received the reports of defeat with growing panic. His invincible fleet was destroyed, his supply lines were cut, and the humans were advancing toward his capital. How is this possible? He demanded of his advisors. Our intelligence said the humans were weak, divided, primitives with basic technology. Your Majesty, it appears our intelligence was wrong, replied his science advisor. The humans have been hiding their true capabilities. They're not the primitives we thought they were. The Emperor looked at the tactical display showing human forces advancing from 3 directions. Then we must call for reinforcements from across the Empire. Every ship, every soldier, we will crush these humans with overwhelming numbers. But even as he gave the order, Nalveth knew it might be too late. The humans had revealed themselves as something far more dangerous than another primitive species. They were liberators, and they were coming for his empire. The counterattack had begun. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity didn't just fight wars, they fought for freedom. The human fleet appeared at the edge of the Zephyr system like an avenging storm. Admiral Carl Peterson stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching as hundreds of alien ships moved to defend their homeworld. The Zephyrian Empire had called in reinforcements from across the galaxy, creating the largest space fleet in galactic history. Admiral, enemy fleet strength is over 800 vessels, reported Lieutenant Ben Murphy. They outnumber us 4-1. Peterson smiled coldly. Numbers don't win wars, Lieutenant. Training and technology do. Signal all ships. Begin the attack. The Ghost Fleet moved forward in perfect formation. The human ships were outnumbered, but they had advantages the aliens couldn't understand. Every human captain was linked through the neural network, sharing information instantly. They fought as one mind, controlling dozens of ships. Emperor Nalveth watched the approaching human fleet from his palace on Zephyr Prime. The alien ruler was confident that sheer numbers would overwhelm the humans. His fleet was the largest ever, assembled with ships from every corner of his empire. Your Majesty, the humans are approaching our outer defenses, reported Fleet Commander Texvar. Our orbital weapons platforms are ready to fire. Destroy them all, Nalveth ordered. Show the galaxy what happens to those who challenge the Zephyrian Empire. The orbital defense platforms opened fire with massive energy cannons. The weapons were designed to destroy entire fleets, but the human ships moved like they could see the future. They dodged the massive energy beams with impossible precision, their neural links allowing them to predict where the shots would go. Sir, they're avoiding our weapons somehow, Texvar reported in confusion. It's like they know where we're going to shoot before we fire. The human fleet reached the Zephyrian battle line and the real fighting began. The alien ships fired massive volleys of plasma weapons, but the human adaptive armor turned the energy against them. Every shot made the human ships stronger while depleting the aliens. Power reserves. Captain Amy Rodriguez led her squadron in a devastating attack on the alien flagship. Her neural implants allowed her to coordinate with 5 other ships as if they were extensions of her own body. They moved in perfect synchronization, focusing their fire on specific weak points. Target their power core, Rodriguez ordered through the neural link. All ships fire quantum torpedoes on my mark. The combined attack struck the alien flagship's reactor. The massive ship exploded in a brilliant flash, taking 3 smaller vessels with it. The Zephyrian fleet began to panic as they realized their weapons were useless, while the space battle raged overhead. Colonel Maya Scott led the ground invasion of Zephyr Prime. Her shock corps soldiers dropped from orbit in armored pods, landing in the middle of the alien capital city. They had one mission: rescue the slaves and capture the Emperor. The Zephyrian ground forces tried to stop them, but it was hopeless. The human soldiers moved through the city like unstoppable machines. Their powered armor protected them from alien weapons, while their own rifles could penetrate any shield. "Maya, we've found the slave camps," reported Lieutenant Chris Morgan over the neural link. "It's worse than we thought." Scott saw the images through Morgan's helmet camera and felt sick. The aliens had built massive prison complexes where millions of beings from dozens of species were forced to work. The conditions were horrible. Beings were dying of exhaustion, starvation, and disease. "Free them all," Scott ordered. "Every single prisoner gets liberated today." The human soldiers moved through the prison camps with grim efficiency. They destroyed the alien guards and opened every cell. Beings who had been slaves for decades suddenly found themselves free, protected by human soldiers who fought like legends. One of the freed slaves, a small creature with blue skin and large eyes, grabbed Scott's armored hand. "Are you really here to free us?" the being asked in broken Zephyrian. "We're here to end slavery forever," Scott replied in the creature's own language, downloaded through her neural implants. "No one will ever own you again." As word spread through the prison camps, something amazing happened. The freed slaves began to help the humans. They knew the layout of the city, the location of weapons depots, and the Emperor's hiding places. What had started as a rescue mission became a full rebellion. Lieutenant Morgan led a mixed team of humans and freed slaves toward the Emperor's palace. The aliens had fortified the building, but their former victims knew secret passages and weak points. The slaves had been planning their revenge for years. "The Emperor's throne room is on the top floor," explained Kira, a former slave who had worked in the palace. "There are 3 ways in, but only one is unguarded." The assault team moved through the palace like shadows. The human soldiers used their advanced weapons to clear the path, while the freed slaves guided them past hidden traps and security systems. They had turned the aliens' own knowledge against them. In space, the battle was ending. The Zephyrian fleet was in ruins, their ships floating as burning wreckage. Admiral Peterson's Ghost Fleet had lost only 6 vessels while destroying over 700 alien ships. The neural link technology had made the difference. The humans fought as one mind while the aliens fought as individuals. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender requests from 12 alien worlds," reported Lieutenant Murphy. "They're asking for terms." "Tell them we don't negotiate with slavers," Peterson replied. "They can surrender unconditionally or be destroyed. Those are their only choices." On the planet below, Colonel Scott's team reached the Emperor's throne room. The massive chamber was filled with alien guards, but they were no match for human technology and the rage of freed slaves. The guards fell quickly, leaving Emperor Nalvath alone on his throne. The alien ruler was tall and imposing, with gray skin marked by scars of ancient battles. He had ruled the galaxy's largest slave empire for over 2 centuries, crushing dozens of species under his rule. Now he faced a small human woman in black armor. "So you are the humans," Nalvath said, his voice filled with hatred. "You have destroyed my fleet, freed my slaves, and invaded my world. What do you want?" Scott removed her helmet, revealing a face marked by determination and anger. "Justice. You've enslaved millions of beings, worked them to death, and spread suffering across the galaxy. That ends today." "You cannot destroy an empire that has lasted 1,000 years, the Emperor snarled. "Kill me, and others will take my place. The Zephyrian way will continue." Scott looked around the throne room at the freed slaves who had helped her reach this place. Beings from 30 different species stood together, united in their hatred of tyranny. "You're wrong. Your empire dies with you, but the galaxy will remember what happens to slavers." The Emperor raised a hidden weapon, but he was too slow. Scott's reflexes, enhanced by neural implants, were 3 times faster than normal. Her shot struck him before he could fire, ending the reign of the galaxy's greatest tyrant. Admiral Peterson's voice came through the communication system, reaching every ship and soldier in the system. "This is Admiral Peterson to all forces. Emperor Nalvath is dead. The Zephyrian Empire is finished. Today, 50 million slaves go free." Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. Species that had lived in fear of Zephyrian conquest celebrated in the streets. The humans had done what no one thought possible. They had destroyed the greatest empire in galactic history. General Hayes addressed the galaxy from the former Emperor's throne room. Behind him stood representatives from 30 liberated species, all united under humanity's protection. People of the galaxy, the age of slavery is over. The Zephyrian Empire bombed our colonies, thinking we were weak. They awakened something they couldn't imagine, not just Earth's military, but the conscience of an entire species. We fight not for conquest, but for freedom. Any species that threatens the innocent will face the same fate as the Zephyrians. The message was broadcast to every world in the galaxy. Humanity had revealed itself not as conquerors, but as protectors. The species that had hidden their true strength for decades now stood as the galaxy's guardians. Colonel Scott stood in the ruins of the slave camps, watching as transport ships carried freed beings back to their homeworlds. Some had been slaves for so long they had forgotten their own planets existed. Others wept with joy at the thought of seeing their families again. "Colonel, we've found something else," reported Lieutenant Morgan. He led her to a massive data center beneath the palace. The Zephyrians kept records of every species they conquered. There are detailed files on thousands of civilizations. Scott studied the information. The scope of the Empire's crimes was staggering. They had enslaved entire planets, wiped out cultures, and destroyed civilizations that had lasted millions of years. The galaxy was filled with species that had been beaten down so badly they had forgotten how to be free. "Send all this data to Dr. Price on Earth," Scott ordered. "We're going to need it to help rebuild what the Zephyrians destroyed." Back on Earth, the world celebrated humanity's victory. But for the leaders who knew the truth, the real work was just beginning. They had destroyed an empire, but now they had to help rebuild a galaxy. President Lisa Carter addressed the United Nations in an emergency session. "Ladies and gentlemen, we face a choice.